What do you actually do the moment a woman goes quiet on you? Most men think the answer is patience, stay calm, give her space, be the bigger person. That instinct isn't wrong exactly, but there's a version of staying calm that quietly confirms every doubt she had about you, and a version that actually changes how she sees you completely. They look almost identical from the outside. The difference isn't in what you say when she finally responds. It's in something you do during the silence, long before she ever answers, something you've probably never noticed yourself doing. Picture the ordinary version first, because most men live here without realizing it. She goes quiet after a disagreement, or for no clear reason at all. You wait an hour, then check the chat again. Nothing. You reread your last message 3 times, hunting for the sentence that upset her, even though some part of you already knows it was fine. This isn't weakness. It's a completely reasonable response to uncertainty. Humans hate not knowing where they stand, and checking feels like closing that gap. For some men, the pull is stronger than it should be, like an old wound flinching before it's even been touched. We'll come back to that. Here's what almost nobody explains clearly. Being ignored isn't always punishment. Sometimes it isn't even about you. She's busy, distracted, working through her own mood. But often, especially after tension, it functions as a quiet measurement. Not a calculated test where she's tracking your every move on a scoreboard. Nothing that deliberate. More a way her mind checks something without meaning to. Does his mood depend on mine? For a lot of men, the honest answer is yes. At least for a few hours, it clearly does. So here's the first reversal, and it's the one that changes everything downstream. The instinct to respond quickly, explain your position, or lighten the mood with a joke feels like maturity. It usually isn't. The moment you respond to being ignored, you've already handed her the information she was quietly checking for. Not because responding is bad, but because responding fast, over-explaining, or rushing to smooth things over proves that her silence has more control over your next hour than your own day does. None of this stays a single moment for long, either. The first time she goes quiet and you check the chat twice, that's nothing. That's normal. But if it keeps happening, something else starts forming underneath it. She learns, without deciding to, that distance reliably gets a reaction out of you. You learn, without deciding to, that discomfort from being ignored is unbearable enough to interrupt whatever you were doing. Neither of you sits down and plans this. It just becomes the shape the relationship quietly takes, and it stops being about her intentions fast. You open the conversation just to check if the little read marker has changed, without typing anything. You glance at your phone mid-conversation with someone else, half listen in a meeting, skip a workout you'd normally do, not consciously, just because leaving your phone in a locker for an hour suddenly feels harder to justify than usual. Your mood starts orbiting around whether she responds, the same way checking a wound keeps it from healing. None of it looks dramatic from the outside. It's small enough that you could go weeks without noticing you've quietly restructured pieces of your day around a notification that may not even come. There's a distinction most men never learn to make: the difference between one ignored message and an actual pattern. One unanswered text after a long day means nothing. Concern starts when the same sequence repeats enough times that you can predict your own reaction before it happens. When you already know, the moment you see 2 gray check marks and no reply, exactly which thoughts are coming next. The first time, checking twice is just curiosity. By the fifth time, it's a script running without your permission, and scripts like that don't get weaker with repetition. They get faster. There's a twist here most men miss completely too. The clever, unbothered follow-up message, the one built to look confident and reset the mood, usually reads as the opposite of what you intended. A genuinely unbothered person doesn't need to perform unbothered. The extra effort spent sounding relaxed is often what gives it away. If you're crafting the perfect casual reply, deleting a word, softening a sentence, timing exactly when to send it, you're not being calm. You're just being anxious with better editing. From here, the instinct is to escalate, wait 2 days instead of 2 hours, go cold on purpose, match her silence with your own as a kind of quiet punishment, stop initiating anything. Answer in monotone if she does reach out. All of it fails the same way. It doesn't make her chase you harder. It makes her stop checking whether you're upset at all, because your behavior has become predictable. And predictable behavior is easy to plan a life around. She adjusts. She fills her week without factoring you in as heavily as before. Engineered coldness isn't detachment. It's the same performance wearing a stricter costume, and most people can feel the difference between someone who genuinely doesn't need a reaction and someone punishing them for not giving one. By this point, the real question underneath the title has shifted. It's no longer what do I do when she ignores me. It's why does her silence get to decide how my next few hours go? For a lot of men, the drive to respond quickly or cleverly was never really about repairing the relationship. It was about relief, getting rid of the discomfort of not knowing as fast as possible. That's a completely human thing to want. It's just not something a message to her can actually fix. The actual shift, the one that changes more than any calculated silence ever could, is smaller and far less dramatic than either extreme. It means removing the specific behaviors that were keeping your mood tied to her response, not removing her, not removing warmth, just the behaviors. No repeatedly checking whether the message was read. No rehearsing what you'll say when she finally replied. No tracking how long she took compared to how long you waited. If you're still measuring anything about the silence, you haven't actually stopped participating in it. This is where it typically gets harder before it gets clearer, and it's where most men quit. Genuinely not tracking her response feels uncomfortable at first, almost wrong, because you're used to using her reaction as a signal for how your day should feel. Without that signal, there's just quiet. And quiet feels unfamiliar when you've spent months letting someone else's timing set your mood. That discomfort isn't proof you're doing this incorrectly. It's usually proof the old habit is finally losing its grip on you. Remember the flinch from earlier? The pull that feels stronger than the moment deserves? That shows up hardest in men who've already been through a painful breakup or a marriage that ended badly, because their mind has a stored memory of what silence eventually turned into last time. That's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition doing its job a little too eagerly. The thing worth noticing isn't the worry itself. It's whether you're reacting to what's actually happening right now or replaying a different situation from years ago onto someone who hasn't done anything yet. Try it for one full day, no checking, and something unexpected tends to happen. She often notices the shift before you'd expect, not because she's been anxiously waiting, but because your predictability just changed, and people notice change more than they notice consistency. She might reach out sooner than usual. That's not proof she was secretly testing you the whole time. It's usually just her mind reacting to an unfamiliar pattern, the same way you'd glance twice at a store that suddenly changed its hours. Don't mistake that early reaction for the finish line, though. One calm day without checking isn't detachment if you're still quietly counting how long it's been since she messaged. One non-reaction doesn't undo months of treating her silence like a verdict on your worth. What actually shifts the dynamic, hers and your own expectations both, is doing this consistently enough that checking her activity stops being your automatic response to discomfort. A single boundary is a moment. A boundary that holds up the fifth time it gets tested is what actually becomes a new identity. Expect resistance, too, because change rarely arrives without friction. Someone used to your quick responses may read this new steadiness as coldness at first, maybe even accuse you of pulling away, when really you've just stopped auditioning for her attention. That reaction isn't proof you're handling this wrong. It's often just someone recalibrating to a version of you that no longer needs constant reassurance to function normally. There's a difference worth naming here, too, between genuine initiative and quiet pursuit disguised as patience. Reaching out once, warmly, without checking for a reply afterward, is initiative. Reaching out once and then refreshing the conversation 11 times over the next 2 hours is pursuit wearing a calm outfit. The behavior looks almost identical from a screenshot. The difference is entirely in what happens after you send it, whether your evening continues normally or quietly reorganizes itself around a screen. Which brings you to the part that actually matters, and it has almost nothing to do with her. You are never going to control whether she ignores you, for how long, or why. What you can control is whether her silence still gets to run your next few hours, or whether your mood belongs to you regardless of what her screen says, not the message you send once she finally replies. Who's in charge of your evening while you wait? Her silence was never the test. Your reaction was.